Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes here and thank you for joining me for this episode of my random album reviews. It has been a little while since I've done an episode in this series, so I'm super excited to get into today's video, especially because today's album is by one of my favourite bands of all time, to be completely honest, if not my favourite band of all time, and spoiler alert, it's my favourite album by this band. So without delaying any longer, this is an album from 2008, it's the fourth studio LP by this band. Today's album is Folie by Fall Out Boy. Now, as usual with my random album reviews, I'll quickly start with a little bit of the personal history that I have with this album. I'll get into my entire thoughts of the album as a whole, I'll break down a little bit of the track listing, and then I'll finish off with a rating out of 10. So I'm sure you guys can tell from the get-go, this is an album that I've brought up on my channel plenty of times before. I fucking love this album, there's so much that I could talk about it, so we might as well get straight into it. In my eyes, this is one of the all-time great albums. I fucking love it. From the very first time I heard this album back in 2008 when it came out, till the present day, each and every time I listen to it, I fucking love it. And I've heard this album so many times, like more times than I can even imagine. And each and every time, it just doesn't ever drop in quality. It's always consistently good. The earliest memories I have of moments from this album was obviously hearing the lead singles being I Don't Care and America's Sweethearts, and I also very clearly remember seeing their music videos play on TV. I love the music video for I Don't Care. I think it's really funny, and obviously I remember the music video for America's Sweethearts as well, but they were the first early memories of moments from this album. But the earliest moments of hearing this album in full, which me and my brother still reminisce on till this day, is being at our childhood campground / caravan park. My dad would put this CD into the player, and you would hear the opening chime of the opening song, Disloyal Order of Water Buffaloes, and it would ring around the site. You know, I think it's an organ or piano that has the opening chime, and you would just sit there and go, yep, we're about to listen to Folie, and you would listen to the album from start to finish in this little campsite. And it was actually pretty common. Once the album was over, it would just be started up again and you'd listen to it again in full. If not, you would hear it again the next day. It was just a constant routine, and as I said, that's something that me and my brother still reminisce on till this day. Now, if you're a fan of the band like myself, I think we can all agree that this is undeniably in the band's best work over their career, but I usually find myself in the big debate of which is the better album, Infinity on High, which is the album before this one if you're unaware, or Folie. And I feel like most of the time when I have this conversation with fans of Fall Out Boy, most of them side on the side of Infinity on High, which I will say has the higher highs. You know, the best songs on Infinity on High surpass the best songs on Folie. However, for me, Folie has better consistency, and coming from a point of bias again, I just grew up listening to this album more. I have just a bigger love for it, but don't get me wrong, I still think Infinity on High is a great album, but in that scenario, I got to side with Folie. But I've had this love and relationship with this album and its songs for such a long time, it's just hard to pass over. As I said, the nostalgic chime of the opening to Disloyal Order of Water Buffaloes, to the catchiness of singles like I Don't Care, finding underrated tunes myself over time like Tiffany Blues, and then even the cover of Michael Jackson's Beat It, which closes this version of the album. Not only a great cover, but to be completely honest, one of my most influential songs of all time. Also, in my opinion, I believe this was the band's last truly great album. I mean, they've had passable ones since, but I don't think anything has really come close to the heights of their 3-album streak, being From Under the Cork Tree, Infinity on High, and Folie. And I feel like that's sort of the popular opinion amongst fans as well, this being a quite successful album, but being the last one before the band's hiatus. They obviously returned with Save Rock and Roll in 2013, if I remember correctly, but since Folie, I don't think they've had an album that has reached the heights of the 3 that I just previously mentioned. This was also the stage of their career where they couldn't really be considered pop-punk anymore, like they were in their From Under the Cork Tree days and prior. This album more so secured them in their signature sound, which they kind of established with the previous album Infinity on High, which is more so pop rock, but still has moments of infectious pop punk from their roots, like songs like I Don't Care and America's Sweethearts, but also dipping its toes into some heavier stuff as well, like Head First Slide, Whams, West Coast smoker. And this isn't me saying that they've either gone heavier with this album or, they've completely ditched their pop punk roots. As I said, just overall, it's their most consistent effort. To me, there is just no bad songs on this album, and even if you're a person where you're like, yeah, I'm meh on a handful of them or on a couple, I will not accept anyone saying that there is a bad chorus on this album. Every single hook and every single chorus on this album fucking slaps, and as I said, if anyone says otherwise, they're fucking lying. So getting into the track listing now and breaking down a handful of songs, this album opens up with, like I said before with my little story time, a personal iconic track being Disloyal Order of Water Buffaloes, but this song is more than just memories. This song has so many layers which makes it an undeniable banger and a great choice to open up the album. But then you get into probably the actual most iconic song on the album being I Don't Care. The most recognizable song for casual fans or just people that came across Fall Out Boy, being a leading single for this album, and it got plenty of radio play. The strong run continues with another two of my personal favourites being She's My Winona and America's Sweethearts, and the quality continues the whole way through the album, like I said before, but this middle part maybe dishes up sort of a run where you could say they just aren't my personal favourites. Still really enjoy them, just not personal top contenders. You have Headfirst Slide into Cooperstown on a Bad Bet, which is a song when I was younger I didn't really love, but it's grown on me. Shipped the Gold Standard, Coffee for Closers into the piano ballad being Water Catch Donny. Now, if someone is twisting my arm and I have to say my weakest pick off this album, I'm going to go with track 9 after the stretch of songs that I just mentioned, being 27. Of course, still a great song. I don't want anyone to think that I hate the song. I still fucking love it. But as I said, if someone's twisting my arm and I have to say the weakest point on this album, I'm going to go with 27. But the null does not stay around for very long, because then we get into probably my pick for the most underrated song on this album, being Tiffany Blues. And the same could be said about the next track being the bass-heavy brooding track Whams. And $20 Nosebleed follows up, being possibly the most unique song off this album. And then that goes into, again, another heavier song being West Coast Smoker, short, sharp, but just does the job. And it's the closing song for the original lineup of songs on this album, because then we get into the cover of Michael Jackson's Beat It, which is literally one of my favourite covers of all time to close out what is an incredible album. So overall, this is an album, whenever I've brought it up on my channel, I've never had little to say about it. I've never been shy of expressing how much I fucking love this album. This album, in my eyes, is the band's peak. It's everything that the band does well, done at its best, if that makes sense. Like, the writing and the lyrics are incredible. They've always been great at that, and being sung by Patrick Stump in the vocals department just pushes them even higher. Not to say that the verses or anything bad, but Fall Out Boy have always never struggled with writing great choruses and hooks, and on this album there is not one single blemish in that department. As I get into my rating, I understand that there's possibly a little bit of bias involved. A personal favourite growing up, as I said, this album's so influential to me and my taste in music and my life. I know this album back to front, I know which song leads into the next. They have great transitions in this album as well. But with that being said, and trying to put my bias on the side, I also just think this is genuinely a really fucking strong album. So for my rating, I'm going to give Folie by Fall Out Boy a 10 out of 10. This is the first 10 out of 10 in my random album review series. I've given, I think the highest score before is a 9, but this album has always been a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, as soon as I pulled this off my shelf, that's where the randomness comes in. I do a random number generator. Whatever number I get, I pull that off my shelf. As soon as I pulled this album off, I just went, it's going to be the first 10, because I fucking love this album. As I said, I've never been shy of expressing that. I just think this album is great. So there we go, guys. If you're familiar with Folie by Fall Out Boy, let me know your thoughts of this album in the comments below. I should have my tracklist ranking video out at the same time. I'll put that in the description if I remember. If you're unfamiliar with the tracklist ranking, that's where I go through the whole catalogue of songs on this album and rank them from my least favourite to favourite, which is obviously going to be extremely hard. Like I said before, 27 is probably my least favourite song now. could change over time. You know, I'm not going to say what my favourite song at the moment is, but I feel like every song at one point has been my favourite on this album, so go check out that video as well. As I said, it should be up at the same time. But thank you for joining me for this random album review, guys, and I'll see you for another video soon. Peace.